All right, Kristine, I have 4 o'clock and it looks like people are settling in, so I think we can go ahead and get started.
Okay, thank you, Jorgen. Hi, everyone. My name is Kristine Nemec. I'm the Iowa Roadside Management Coordinator here at the UNI Tallgrass Prairie Center. That's where I work. And I'm happy to join you today for a virtual field tour of some roadsides. I guess briefly I'll explain what I do. I help support counties across Iowa that choose to have a roadside vegetation program. A county that has a program plants native plants in their roadsides. They're strategic about how they mow or spray their roadsides. They're strategic about just spraying the worst weeds and not just blanket spraying the whole roadside with herbicides. That helps save money and that helps the environment. They also clear brush when it's a safety concern. So that's one of the big benefits of having a program. And they also provide leadership to the county as far as how the roadsides are managed, as opposed to contracting it out piecemeal. That's a big advantage of having a roadside program with a roadside manager. Of course, having all these native plants helps reduce erosion, provides wildlife habitat, adds interest and beauty to the roadsides, helps filter nutrients from water. So there's a lot of benefits to having these native plants in the roadsides. Now there's 44 counties around Iowa that have a program. Today, we're going to focus on one of those. Bremer County has had a program since around 2015. So they're a new-ish program, but they've been around 5 years. They have some established plantings. And our roadside manager today is David Lehman. He's been with the program since its start in 2015. So he's going to point out some plants on the roadside, talk about what he does, be available for questions. I'll also be available for questions. So without further ado, I will turn it over to David. I'd like to thank Paige Schaefer. She was involved with the Botany Beginners course. For those of you who are on that, she'll be the camera person today. So thank you to Paige for being there, and also to David for showing us around today. So take it away, David.
Okay. As Kristine said, I'm David Lehman. I've been in Bremer County since 1989. When I moved up here, just a little background. I'm originally from Louisiana, went to college in Kansas as a biology major and got a forestry degree at University of Minnesota, St. Paul. I've worked in wholesale nursery at Sherman Nursery when it was at Charles City. Then I worked in landscaping for about 10, 12 years, also in Charles City. And this position opened, and so I applied and was selected. But a little bit about prairie and native grasses, it's a whole lot different than landscaping. When you go out and seed a yard, you know within 2 or 3 weeks whether it was a success or not. Well, with a native prairie planting, you're looking at 3 years at least before you can make a determination of was it a success or not. So this area that we're working with today is probably the largest reconstruction planting that we've done. It was planted in early May of 2016. It encompasses both sides of the road. The area is about 3 acres in size, so about 1.5 acres on each side. What they did to do the planting, or the reason for the planting, is I work closely with the Secondary Roads Department, and that's where I'm housed. But my program is an independent program, so I'm independent of secondary roads and conservation, but I more closely work with secondary roads when they do a road project, clean out, etc. I get that information and I go through and do the seeding for that. This one, the ditches were very shallow. There was some snow removal issues. So to help create a place for the snow to go, secondary roads came in, scraped the bottom of the ditch, put it on the road, built up the road, and then I was left to come back and do the seeding. Having the stretch this large, I was able to come in with a tractor, and the piece of equipment I use is a PVB. It's got tines on the front and then a roller on the back to help loosen the soil. I did that. And then I came through with the hydro seeder. And with this one being so large, I was able to do a 2-pass method. So the first pass, I had a couple bales of the mulch in the hydro mulcher, added water, added the seed, and in 2 passes or 2 trips, I was able to seed basically the whole area. Then I came back after that and I added more mulch with just water and mulched over the top of it. So in this case, I was able to get the whole thing seeded probably in 7 or 8 trips with the hydromulcher. First year maintenance, it was a diversity mix that's supplied through UNI Tallgrass Prairie. It's a federal program for TAP seed, Transportation Alternatives Program. It's federally funded. We do our request for how much seed we think we're going to need in a year, and Kristine is able to put together a grant and write a grant for that seed, and then it's available to the counties at no cost. So if the counties have a roadside program, and in conjunction with the DOT, with the Living Roadways Trust Fund, if we have a plan on file, then those counties are eligible for that seed. So I've gotten seed now, I think this is the 6th year that I've been able to get seed to use, and it greatly helps the counties. As you may know, native seed can be quite expensive, and they've been able to put together some very diverse packages. And so that's what we're looking at here right now. So 3 of the plants right in front, we have Coreopsis. And then another one that we have throughout is wild bergamot, also bee balm, monarda. And they're doing a very good job. I haven't seen many butterflies. There's a handful, but it's definitely attracting the insects. I think I got stung by a bee or something, but trying not to kill them. And then another one that we have right in front is showy tick trefoil. This one's done flowering now, but just in a small area, we have a variety of plants. And that's what you want in a planting, is you want the diversity. So with the diversity, you get a diverse ecosystem environment so that you can have multiple insects, bees, butterflies, birds, pheasants. I think our pheasant count today, I think they're doing statewide pheasant count right now. So I think our pheasant count today, if I remember my driver's count correctly, was like 13 hens, 5 roosters, and about 10 chicks. So that was pretty good, I'd say, for what we're doing. But that's what we're looking at doing in the roadside is we're trying to provide avenues for wildlife to come and be able to use it. Just like roads connect us from one place to another, the roadside ditches can be used as connection points for the insects and other animals to use. They certainly aren't going to be as diverse as 10, 15, 30 acre planting, CRP planting, but it should be long lived. The reason that we're using native plants is, I don't know how many of you have been without rain for a while, but if you look at your lawns, well, they're drying up. I think if you look at this planting with the natives, you aren't seeing much for drying up here. I realize it's also in the ditch, so that makes a difference, but they just aren't drying out. So the native plants are adapted to Iowa and to our ecosystem, to the climate, to the environment here. Part of the reason on the tap seed, when that seed mix is established, it's made up for different extremes. So we can go from everything from the wet to the dry to the in-between. So basically it's plant it and let it sort itself out. So this planting could be vastly different than another planting. Just depends on the environmental extremes and what conditions it has. I'm lucky in terms of this one, the watershed isn't that great through here, so it's not draining a whole lot of land. So I didn't get the erosion on this one that I can get on other ones. So it was actually able to establish pretty well. Whereas some of the other ones, you get it planted, you get a 5 or 6 inch rain, kind of wash out what you did. But you can still be surprised by the seed that is able to hang on and stick around throughout the whole thing. This aspect of my job is probably the more rewarding part, because I do get to plant and then you get to see the color come back in. But other things that we're doing for managing roadsides, we're not just managing the ditch cleanouts, the bare ground, but we're also managing other plants in the roadsides. We're managing, many of us are also the weed commissioner. And so by law, by Iowa code, there are certain plants that we need to control. And so we're looking at controlling those with a spot spray program, not a blanket spray program. If we did a blanket spray program, we wouldn't see this color. We would have the grasses, we would have the different textures of the grasses, but we wouldn't have the different plants that are in here. So you will see some Queen Anne's lace in here. It's not one that has to be controlled now on the Iowa weed code, but it's still one that's going to be found throughout all the counties. There's just no way to manage it other than some mowing. But by mowing, you're also going to take up the other and lose the color of the other. So I think most managers would say that it's another color in the landscape.
David, we're at about 4:15. I'm wondering if we should pause and maybe take a couple questions. There's a few questions in the chat.
Okay.
That'd be good.
That'd be good.
This one might actually be for you, Kristine. I know that you had a map. Could you maybe just show us on that, roughly on that map, where we're talking about?
Sure. So this is a map that shows where the different counties are. So I have my cursor over Bremer County here in northeast Iowa, if you want to see the general location of where we are at in relation to the rest of Iowa. And it has the number 7, which shows that's how many years total they've gotten seed. So I think they got seed maybe once or twice before they officially started a program. So that's the orange Q as far as where we're at in the state.
And
And where David's at right now is just southwest of Waverly, if you know where Waverly is in Bremer County.
Great. There was also a question from Mel about can the prairie be extended onto adjoining property using this program? So I don't know, David, is that something you have experience with, making connections to existing habitat from the roadsides directly? Or maybe Kristine, you can speak to that more broadly.
So I'll start with that. I have not contacted area landowners or adjacent landowners to see about, say, planting onto their property 10 or 15 feet to give more of a buffer. I have not done that. I know of at least Fayette County does have a program where they work with area adjacent landowners in terms of extending the prairie. So if they're doing a planting in the roadside, they can also extend it onto that. I believe not sure, but I think they might work with Pheasants Forever to help provide some of that seed. Because the seed that we're receiving through the TAP program is only to be used in the right-of-ways. So Kristine, I don't know if you have more information on that.
I am not aware of that many counties who do try to actively move into the adjacent private property. And that's interesting that Fayette County does that too. So that's up to the county, I guess, how they prioritize where they're going to plant and if they want to work with landowners. That's a neat idea.
Yeah, I think David made a good point where, you know, there are other organizations out there that can help you put habitat on private property, especially working land. So Pheasants Forever is a good one. They're a farm bill biologist with Pheasants Forever scattered throughout the state. And then you can always contact your local NRCS. So maybe not this specific program to make that connection, but it definitely makes a habitat restoration more attractive, I think, if there's a restored roadside right next to it. There was a question about, scroll up here and find it. Oh, is there a plan to eradicate, or I will editorialize a little bit and say at least maybe manage a little bit, wild parsnip?
It varies by county. Some counties are actively spraying for wild parsnip. Others have not. Let's see, do we have, I think we might have a plant right behind. I'm not seeing right offhand here wild parsnip. So in that case, that's good for this planting. They have the chemical companies have come up with a product that is hitting just the carrot. I mean, it hits the carrot family plus some others. The jury is still out on how much overall damage it could do to some of the prairie plants, but it's called TerraView. And it's kind of, I don't know if offshoot of Milestone. And if you're familiar with Milestone, there's forbs that are tolerant to the Milestone. So they're expecting the same thing from TerraView. But it was released to the market very quickly. It was considered a green product by the EPA. And so they were able to release it, and I've used it some this year. And it's supposed to go after the carrot family, which would be, I believe, Queen Anne's lace, wild parsnip, poison hemlock, I'm missing another one right offhand, but those three for sure that it can go after. So you can use that for spraying, and it does a pretty good job. But like I said, some counties are being more aggressive to it than others. I think the fact that it's found in all 99 counties and has been documented in all 99 counties for over 100 years is the reason that looking to eradicate it is probably not an option, but looking at different ways to control it, it definitely has gotten a lot of press recently. If we had a few years of dry springs, that would probably help reduce the population, but lately we've had some wet springs, and I know up here in Bremer County, it's a major problem. And so if it's around people's houses, I do go ahead and do some spraying of it.
Kristine, I want to take a minute here and just read this answer that you typed into the chat. So Bethany asked, there are a lot of gray counties on the map that Kristine showed. Does that mean that not every county has a roadside vegetation manager or a weed commissioner? And what's the reasoning for that? And Kristine said that pretty much every county has a weed commissioner, but it isn't indicated on the map. And the counties that are green have a roadside manager, those that are gray don't. And it's usually because of budget issues, prioritization, or sometimes because of cultural issues where taller native plants are seen as weedy looking. So Kristine, there's another question I want you to speak to just a little bit about the process for a county to get into roadside management program and kind of the cost. And it looks like you maybe just answered that. But
sure, I can go over that. So I would say a first step is probably to develop what's called an IRVM plan, which stands for Integrated Roadside Vegetation Management. That's the technical term for the suite of management principles that we're talking about with the natives and reduced herbicide use and all that. That's the way counties often start, because once you have that plan in place and approved by the DOT, the county can apply for grants, and that'll help offset some of the startup costs, some of the equipment that the roadside managers need. It doesn't pay for salary, so the county needs to find a way to fund the roadside manager, but can really help offset those initial equipment startup costs or the costs of doing a roadside inventory to map the roadsides in the county. So in the chat, I put the contact for Shauna Godbold at the Iowa DOT if you want to learn more about IRVM plans, or you can also email me if you want to learn more, but the DOT ultimately approves of the IRVM plan. And I'm more in charge of helping connect the counties to a nearby roadside manager. If your board of supervisors or your engineer wants to learn more, I can connect you with a nearby county. It's always nice to hear from local county officials so they can speak at more at the ground level about how it works in their county and the successes and challenges they face in getting their program off the ground. So again, like I'm a good contact for that, or Shauna more for the IRVM plans.
And Kristine, if I'm just, if I live in one of those grayed out counties and I want to, push or ask my county to look at this more seriously, who in the county would be a good person for people to reach out to?
Well, often the county roadside manager is housed in the secondary roads department. So that might be a good starting point as the engineer and kind of get them to see the benefits. Or sometimes if the engineer is not receptive to it, sometimes the county conservation likes the idea of housing the roadside manager. So that's another person to talk to. So that'd be usually when I've worked with counties, it's either the engineer or the county conservation board director, getting them on board and then approaching the county board of supervisors. And we also kind of work with the county to decide who's the best messenger to approach the county board of supervisors. And often it's another, like the county engineer proposes it, or a bunch of citizens show up at the board of supervisors meeting. If they see there's a lot of support in the county, if you can round up other people to support and they see that at the supervisors meeting, that helps. It kind of depends on the local culture and political climate of your county, who's the best person to propose this to the Board of Supervisors. But again, like I said, initially engineer, conservation board director.
Anything to add to that, David, from kind of an on the ground point of view?
For me, there was one Board of Supervisor that actually wanted something different. He didn't just want the roadsides left bare after the cleanouts were done. So in this case, it was a Board of Supervisor member that was pretty proactive in getting the program going. There have been citizen committees that have formed and have actually put up private money to start a program. So that's probably the rare case, but it can happen.
So David, I'm gonna throw this question to you. There was a question about how many acres have been planted in the program in Bremer County. No pressure.
Oh,
Hold that number
okay.
up of your head.
So probably about 80 to 90 acres have been planted so far. When I first started that, Kristine mentioned that there was one planting or one time that seed was obtained, and that was before I started. I was trying to be a carrot, dangle the carrot, and 10 acres were planted on a road reconstruction project. And then I've averaged about 15 a year. This year I do have a bigger project coming up that I anticipate being able to seed 30 to 40 acres.
And then there was a question too, David. Do you have any problems with overspray from adjacent farmland that, you know, pesticide or herbicide drift?
I haven't noticed the insecticide, but definitely herbicide. Not only just drift, but overspray. So I've got ragweed right along the edge. So I'm going to spray the 6 feet of ditch with Roundup. Well, that's just creating a problem all the way down the road, because not only did you wipe out any wildflowers that were there, you also wiped out the grass too. So succession, you're going to have weeds come back there. Some places it's probably more of a problem than others, but every once in a while you see it, and since you didn't see it happen, it's kind of hard to go back any further with it than that.
Yeah.
And if I spend all my time chasing that down, unfortunately, other aspects of the job wouldn't get done either. So it can be an issue, and I think it's timing with spraying that farmers do, or whether they're having co-ops do it. So unfortunately, yes, it is an issue.
We have just a couple minutes left. I want to give either David or Kristine or both a chance to say a few closing words. And then we just have a couple questions left in the chat. Maybe we can answer those really quickly. I don't know, Kristine, do you want to say anything in closing?
Well, I just like to thank David and Paige for their time. If you'd like to like us on Facebook, if you're into that, you can search for Iowa Roadside Management. And I think maybe in the chat, I'll put the link to that county map if you want to see if your county is involved. And I also put a link in the chat if you want contact information for either your county roadside manager. If your county doesn't have a roadside manager, there's the contact information for the engineer if you ever have any questions for them. Unless David has anything else he'd like to add.
I'll end up with three things. First is these are signs that some counties use for identifying their plantings. So as you can see, it says no spraying, no mowing. And hopefully that it at least helps identify where plantings have been. I'm not going to put them at every planting, but more than likely anything over 10,000 square feet has kind of been my cutoff for what I'm doing. Other counties do go ahead and do the whole thing, their plantings. And then we're going to move over to a couple more plants. The first is Canada Wild Rye that we have. So it's one of the grasses that's in the mix. And then, as everybody knows, monarch butterflies. So we're going to zoom into their host plant, common milkweed. And in the plantings, there are several different milkweeds that are used. A little further up, we also have butterfly milkweed that's showing. But as you know, monarchs are needing the host plant, and this is their host plant. For eating and that, and roadsides are the main place that they are finding the common milkweed. And I can attest that there are many places in our county where unfortunately there's only the common milkweed. There aren't any other wildflowers to go with it. Common milkweed responds well to mowing and comes back, maybe not in the time frame that the monarchs need, but it does respond well, and it does handle some spraying, occasional spraying on it. But we also need all of the different flowers, perennials throughout the landscape.
Great. Thanks, David. I think with that, Kristine answered a question about enforcement of ditch mowing law. It looks like there's a brochure that you can request to get some more information. And I think the only other question we didn't get to, Sarah asked a question about whether wild parsnip is dangerous after it starts turning brown and drying down. I do not know the answer to that. I don't know if Kristine or David know the answer to that. But Sarah, maybe you can reach out to the Tallgrass Prairie Center and they can get you an answer. And with that, we are at 4:33. So I want to make sure that we're respectful of people's time. I will say thanks to David and Kristine and wish everyone a good afternoon. Thanks, everybody.